So there was quite a few people that asked, what the difference between aviation refinement is and, just like regular car automotive detailing. And, I want to bring up some very key important points in this video just so you guys can kind of understand. Just because you could clean cars doesn't mean you go clean airplanes, even though the concept sounds pretty similar. In aviation refinement, there's a lot of things that you have to know about aviation, about aircraft, the specific skills that you would not learn otherwise from car detailing. So, obviously I'll start off with something that is just everybody wants to know about is, the cost. So, the high-end car details, like a full polish and ceramic, those probably profit you, anywhere from $1,000, if you're a smaller shop, $1,000 to $1,200. And if you're a big shop and you charge a little bit more, you probably profit, this is before paying employees, you probably profit, $1,500 to $1,800. So, a full polish from a high-end shop is probably going to be about $2,200 to $2,500. For a smaller operator, it's probably going to be, $1,000 to $1,500. And, that's pretty much like the highest thing you could do in auto detailing, unless you're like pulling seats out and, just doing a whole bunch of other stuff, pulling the wheels off and everything else. I'm just talking basic, simple stuff here. And then versus aviation refinement, the very, very minimal cost for a polish and ceramic on an aircraft, and this is like the smallest airplanes, some of the smallest airplanes that they have. You guys could search up this aircraft. It's a Cessna 172. It's like a trainer airplane. So for something like that, for a polish and ceramic, you would charge anywhere from, $1,500 to $2,200. But obviously that's the smallest type of airplane that you would be working on, or one of the smallest. There's some stuff that's a little bit smaller, but there's also much larger airplanes in aviation. So let's say you get like a PC-12, for example. It's bigger, it carries 6 to 8 passengers, or 6 to 10, I can't remember for sure. And you could do a polish and ceramic on that, but it's about 4 to 5 times more for a polish and ceramic on that kind of airplane versus a 172. So, and then imagine something that's even bigger than a PC-12. So like a Challenger 350, or a Gulfstream. So the profits in aviation refinement are much higher than automotive detailing. Let's say, again, let's bring up the highest income thing in auto detailing, which would be polishing and ceramic coating a car. Let's put that at a high price point at $2,200. To get $2,200 in aviation refinement, you literally just have to go clean 2 airplanes. Obviously it depends on size. You have to kind of put that into factor, but I'm just trying to show you guys how much more money there is in aviation refinement versus automotive detailing. And to clean an airplane, it doesn't take long if you become efficient at it. I can do a whole Gulfstream all by myself in probably about 4 to 6 hours, and then when I first start off, it would take me 8 to 10 hours to do the whole Gulfstream. And also all sorts of other services in aviation refinement. Interior, which obviously automotive, you do offer interiors, but the cost to do it in aviation is so much higher than it would be in a car. So that's just a huge key difference, is the price points, the difference between aviation refinement and auto detailing. So it's like a super high income skill. And another thing is obviously the skill set. So a lot of people think, just because I could clean a car means I could clean an airplane, and that couldn't be further from the truth, even though, the basic key points are kind of the same. A lot of the stuff you have to know, what you could touch on an airplane, what you can't touch, what you have to tape off, where you can't spray. You have to know things about aviation, so you can't really just go from cars and jump onto planes without learning how to do the skill properly. So that's a really big and important thing to remember. Another thing is obviously getting clients. If you think about it, when was the last time you came across somebody with an airplane? I mean, if you did, that's pretty lucky, because, not a lot of people own an airplane. So, if you want to start aviation refinement, you have to know how to find the clients that have the airplanes. You have to know how to connect with them, how to offer the services, how to pitch the services to them, and do all that sorts of stuff. So it's a really big key difference, as well as finding the clientele and earning their trust, and making sure that when you're reaching out to them, when you're talking to them, you know what you're talking about. Because again, if you want to just hop straight from cars onto airplanes without learning anything, doing any kind of training, learning how to do the skills, because some of the stuff actually does fall under maintenance. It's not maintenance, but it falls under the category of maintenance, because that's something that has to be upkept with from a maintenance perspective. So just remember, these are the differences between aviation refinement. Is the skill set is, you could carry it over, but you have to learn new things. you have to know what you can and cannot touch and how to do what properly. The cost difference between, one of the highest things in auto detailing is pretty much almost nearly the bare minimum in aviation refinement. So, just remember these keys. And if you guys are interested in learning how to do aviation refinement, I've been doing it for the last 6 years. 2 years I used to work for somebody, then the last 4 years I've been running my own business. So if you guys want to learn how to do that, just shoot me a DM on Instagram. And I don't like to work with everybody. I'm pretty picky, because obviously if I train somebody, I want to make sure that they're paying attention, they're learning everything that they need to learn, because I don't want to be, even though I wouldn't be held responsible if somebody damages something, I just don't want to have a bad reputation, because I have a strong business in this market. And if you guys are getting training from me, I want to make sure that I'm working with the people that take it seriously. So like I said, if you guys are interested in learning, just shoot me a DM on Instagram, and we can talk about it and see if this is going to be the right fit for you.